My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 71 years old, and I'm dying in a hospice facility in Portland, Oregon. My heart is failing, and the doctors say I have maybe a month left, possibly less. My son Daniel found something last week while cleaning out my old garage. Newspaper clippings hidden inside the wall cavity. Headlines from October 2003 about a federal manhunt in suburban Washington that ended with agents raiding a house. My house. Daniel read enough to know I spent 6 months in federal prison. He knew that part already. What he didn't know was why. What he didn't know was what I'd been hiding in our basement for 3 weeks while the entire federal government closed in around us. He deserves the truth. Maybe you do too. I was a veterinarian back then. Had a successful practice in Olympia. I specialized in emergency cases, the kind other vets wouldn't touch. I had a reputation for taking anything, treating anything, no matter how difficult or dangerous. I ran a night clinic out of our basement for after-hours emergencies. It was fully equipped, better than some animal hospitals. I'd spent years building it up, installing proper ventilation, surgical lights, everything I needed. My marriage to Beth was falling apart. 20 years together and we'd become strangers living in the same house. I worked too much, drank too much, built walls between myself and everyone who tried to love me. Our son Daniel was 16 and angry at the world, mostly angry at me. I'd missed too many games, too many birthdays, too many moments that mattered. I told myself I was providing for them. Really, I was just hiding from them. I was empty inside, going through motions. My life felt like something happening to someone else. Then, on one night in early October 2003, I got a call that changed everything. A trucker on Highway 12 hit something massive. Something that shouldn't exist, something that was still alive and bleeding out in the forest. I had no idea that decision to respond would destroy my life and somehow save it at the same time. I had no idea I was about to spend 3 weeks hiding a wounded Bigfoot in my basement while federal agents searched every house in our neighborhood. I had no idea that protecting something impossible would be the first honest thing I'd done in years. This is what happened during those 3 weeks. This is why I went to prison. This is why some secrets are worth keeping, even when they cost you everything. I need to tell you who I was before that night, before the Bigfoot, before everything changed. You need to understand the man I'd become so you can understand why I made the choices I made. I'd been a veterinarian for 23 years. Started my practice in 1990 right after finishing school. I was good at it, really good. I could diagnose things other vets missed. I could perform surgeries that most wouldn't attempt. But somewhere along the way, the work became an escape. Every emergency call was a reason to leave home. Every late night at the clinic was a reason to avoid my family. I convinced myself I was dedicated. I was really just a coward. Beth tried everything to reach me. Therapy, date nights, long conversations about what we'd lost. I showed up physically, but I was never really there. My mind was always somewhere else, planning the next surgery, thinking about the next case. She stopped trying around 2001. We became roommates who shared a son. Polite strangers passing in hallways. She had her nursing job. I had my clinic. We had separate lives under the same roof. Daniel suffered the most. He was a good kid despite having me as a father. Smart, athletic, sensitive in ways I'd forgotten how to be. He needed a dad who showed up. He got a man who was always working, always drinking, always absent. By 2003, he barely spoke to me. When he did, it was with this look in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe pity. That hurt worse than anger would have. I drank to numb it, not falling down drunk, just enough to blur the edges, enough to sleep without thinking about what I'd destroyed, enough to pretend I was fine. My basement clinic became my sanctuary. Down there with injured animals, everything made sense. Animals didn't judge. They didn't ask why I was never home for dinner. They just needed help, and I could provide it. I told myself I was doing important work, saving lives, making a difference. The truth was simpler and uglier. I was hiding from the life I'd built and the people I'd hurt. That's who I was in October 2003. a successful veterinarian, a failed husband, an absent father, a man so disconnected from his own life that he could barely recognize himself in mirrors. I was empty, going through motions, waiting for something to give my life meaning again. Then, the Bigfoot came and gave me a chance at redemption I didn't deserve. The call came at 11:47 on a Friday night. I was in my basement clinic organizing supplies, half drunk on whiskey. Beth and Daniel were asleep upstairs. The voice on the phone was panicked. A trucker named Ray. He'd hit something on Highway 12, something big, something that ran into the forest but left a blood trail. He thought it was still alive. He didn't know what it was. I should have called Fish and Wildlife. That was protocol. But something in his voice made me grab my emergency kit and go. I found the scene 20 minutes later. Ray's logging truck was pulled over, flashers on. A state trooper was already there, his cruiser blocking the right lane. Skid marks on the asphalt, blood, a lot of it. The trooper's name was Miller, young guy, maybe 25. He looked shaken. He pointed his flashlight into the tree line, said something ran in there, something that walked on two legs but wasn't human. We followed the blood trail. It led 50 yards into the forest before we found it. I've spent my entire life working with animals. I've treated everything from house cats to bears. I thought I'd seen every kind of creature that existed in the Pacific Northwest. I was wrong. The Bigfoot was lying against a fallen log, 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark reddish-brown hair, breathing in shallow, pained gasps, blood soaking the ground beneath it. It wasn't a bear. The proportions were all wrong. The face was wrong. The hands were wrong. Too human, not human enough. Something in between that shouldn't exist. Miller radioed it in as a bear attack victim. He was confused, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. I heard him describe it wrong because his brain couldn't process what was right. I sedated it. Professional instinct overriding shock. I calculated the dosage based on weight, body mass, respiration rate. The Bigfoot didn't resist, just watched me with eyes that were far too intelligent, far too aware. Miller helped me load it into my van. It took both of us. The Bigfoot must have weighed 500 pounds. We laid it across the back seats, its legs hanging over. As I drove away, I heard sirens, multiple vehicles converging on the scene. Someone had been monitoring police scanners. Someone had heard Miller's confused radio call about a large unknown animal. I made a decision in that moment. Instead of going to the animal hospital where I should have taken it, I drove home, to my basement clinic, to privacy. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew something told me this Bigfoot needed to be hidden. I carried the Bigfoot down to my basement clinic at 3 a.m. Beth and Daniel were still asleep upstairs. I was alone with something impossible on my examination table. The Bigfoot was unconscious from the sedation but breathing steadily. I turned on all the lights and started my assessment. What I found made my hands shake. Broken ribs on the left side, internal bleeding in the abdomen, compound fracture of the left femur, bone visible through torn skin, massive contusions across the chest and shoulders, road rash covering the right side where it had rolled after impact. But the anatomy was what stopped me. This wasn't any known primate. The skeletal structure was humanoid, but heavier, denser. The musculature was incredible, layers of tissue I'd never seen in any anatomy textbook. The hands had opposable thumbs and careful articulation, tool-using hands. I worked through the night. I'd performed emergency surgery hundreds of times, but never on anything like this. I stopped the internal bleeding, set the leg fracture with pins and a cast, sutured the worst lacerations, started IV fluids and antibiotics. By dawn, the Bigfoot was stabilized, alive, but it would need intensive care for weeks, maybe months. I stood there covered in blood, realizing what I'd done. I'd hidden an unknown creature in my basement. I'd performed surgery without reporting it to authorities. I couldn't take it anywhere now without explaining why I'd concealed it initially. I was committed whether I wanted to be or not. I cleaned up the blood, stored the medical waste, locked the basement door, went upstairs and showered, changed clothes, tried to act normal. Beth was making coffee when I came into the kitchen. She asked why I'd been out all night. I told her emergency call, difficult case, everything was fine. She knew I was lying. 20 years of marriage teaches you when someone's hiding something. But she didn't push. We didn't push each other anymore. Daniel left for school without speaking to me. Normal for us by then. I turned on the news while drinking coffee. Third story in. Large unknown animal spotted near Highway 12. Fish and Wildlife investigating. Witnesses reported something that didn't match known species in the area. They were already looking for the Bigfoot, already mobilizing resources to find it. I went back down to the basement. The Bigfoot was still unconscious, but stable. I sat in my chair and watched it breathe, watched its chest rise and fall, watched its fingers twitch occasionally in sedated sleep. I'd saved its life. And now I had to figure out how to keep it alive without getting caught. I had no idea the federal government was already getting involved, no idea that within days this would become a manhunt that would destroy everything I had left. The Bigfoot woke up on the second day. I was changing its IV when its eyes opened, dark brown, almost black, intelligence looking back at me that made my breath catch. It didn't thrash or fight, just lay there watching me with absolute awareness, calculating, assessing threat. I could see it thinking, processing where it was and what had happened. I spoke softly, told it I wasn't going to hurt it, told it I was trying to help. The Bigfoot tilted its head slightly, listening. I don't know if it understood words, but it seemed to understand intent. I kept it heavily sedated for the first 3 days. Not to be cruel, but to let the bones start healing, let the internal injuries stabilize. But watching it drift in and out of consciousness felt wrong. This wasn't an animal. This was a being, a person, maybe, in a form I didn't recognize. On the 4th day, I reduced the sedation, let it stay awake for longer periods. It needed to eat, needed to participate in its own recovery. I brought food, started with what I'd give any large omnivore, raw meat, fish, vegetables. The Bigfoot wouldn't touch the meat, wouldn't even look at it, but it ate the fruit I offered, carefully took an apple from my hand and bit into it. The gentleness of that gesture from something so massive shook me. It watched me constantly, studied my movements, my equipment, the way I checked its vitals, intelligence radiating from those eyes, learning, understanding. I noticed it adjusting its own AV when I wasn't looking, repositioning the needle for better flow. I'd set the leg cast, but the Bigfoot kept touching it, testing the stability, even improving the teeth positioning by shifting weight distribution. This was tool use, problem solving, self-awareness. Beth called down the stairs one afternoon, asked what I was doing in the basement. I told her I had a dangerous case, a dog with aggressive tendencies and a severe bite wound, needed quarantine, needed privacy. She accepted that, or pretended to. I heard doubt in her voice. The news reports were escalating. Mystery animal sightings now involved federal agencies. Fish and Wildlife brought in help from other departments. They were searching the forests around Highway 12 in a grid pattern, getting closer to residential areas. They mentioned unknown primate species, possible scientific discovery. That's when I knew this was bigger than a local wildlife incident. The federal government doesn't mobilize like this for a lost bear. I sat with the Bigfoot one evening and just looked at it. Really looked at it. This being that shouldn't exist. This creature that was changing everything I thought I knew about the world. It looked back at me with those intelligent eyes, and I saw something I recognized. Loneliness, fear, the look of someone completely alone and unsure if they'd survive. I knew that look. I'd seen it in my own mirror for years. I started calling it August in my mind. The name just came to me one night. August was the month my father died. Quiet, mysterious, gone before I understood him. The Bigfoot felt the same way. August was healing faster than I expected. The broken ribs were knitting. The leg fracture was stable. The lacerations had closed cleanly with no infection. Whatever this species was, it had remarkable regenerative capabilities. We developed a routine. I'd come down in the morning before work, check vitals, change bandages, bring food. August would watch me work, those intelligent eyes tracking every movement. On the 7th day, August did something that changed everything between us. I was cleaning up spilled antibiotic powder on the floor. When I looked up, August had reached down from the examination table and was drawing in the powder with one finger. Simple images, a forest, multiple large figures standing together, clearly Bigfoot, then smaller figures that might have been young, a family group, then a new image, human shapes holding long objects, guns, the human shapes pointing at the Bigfoot figures, then just one Bigfoot figure, alone, August. I understood. August had a family once, a group, a community. Humans with weapons had destroyed them. August was alone now, the last one, hiding, surviving. August looked at me and pointed at my left hand, at my wedding ring, then made a gesture I somehow understood as a question. I pulled out my wallet, showed August the photo I carried. Beth and Daniel from 3 years ago, before everything fell completely apart, back when we still took family photos and pretended we were okay. August studied the picture for a long time, then touched it gently with one massive finger, then made a sound, low and mournful, unmistakable. Grief. August recognized loss, recognized family, recognized what it meant to be separated from people you loved. We sat there together in silence, two isolated beings who'd found each other by accident, both hiding from worlds that had become too painful, both carrying losses we couldn't articulate. I reached out slowly, giving August time to pull away. August didn't move. I placed my hand on August's arm. The hair was coarse, but the skin underneath was warm, living, real. August covered my hand with its own. The gesture was so human it made my throat tight. Connection across impossible distance, understanding despite having no common language. That night I broke protocol for the first time. I brought down medical books and showed August the diagrams, the skeletal system, the muscular system, where injuries heal and how. August studied every page with focused intensity, pointed at its own body, comparing the diagrams to its anatomy, learning, understanding treatment. This wasn't an animal recovering in my clinic. This was a person, a being with consciousness and culture and capacity for connection, and that meant everything I was doing mattered more than I'd realized. The news changed everything on day 10. I was watching the morning broadcast while eating breakfast. Beth sat across from me, silent as usual. Daniel had already left for school. The anchor announced federal agencies were setting up a perimeter around Olympia. Not just fish and wildlife anymore. FBI, unnamed military contractors, they were searching for an unknown large primate, possibly dangerous, possibly a threat to public safety. Roadblocks going up on major highways, house-to-house searches in rural areas under the guise of wildlife disturbance investigation. A tip line with a $50,000 reward for information. Beth looked at me across the table. Really looked at me for the first time in months. She knew something was wrong. She knew I was involved somehow. That afternoon, agents came to my clinic. 2 men in dark suits. They didn't identify their agency. Just showed badges too quickly for me to read and asked questions. Had I treated any unusual animal cases recently? Had I seen anything strange near Highway 12? Had anyone contacted me about an unknown creature? I lied professionally, smoothly. Said I'd heard the news but hadn't seen anything. Showed them my appointment book. Offered to call if I noticed anything unusual. They gave me a card, anonymous tip line printed on it. They said the reward had increased to $75,000. They said cooperation was appreciated. Failure to report could result in federal charges. After they left, my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold my coffee cup. August was in my basement. Federal agents were searching house by house. It was only a matter of time before they knocked on my door with a warrant. I went home early, found Beth in the kitchen. She stopped me before I could go downstairs. She said we needed to talk. Said she knew I was hiding something. Said she'd heard sounds from the basement at night, strange sounds. Said she'd noticed the amount of food disappearing from our refrigerator. I stood there trying to decide what to lie to tell her. Then I realized I was tired of lying, tired of hiding, tired of building walls between myself and the only people who still cared if I lived or died. I told her the truth, about the call, about Highway 12, about what I'd found bleeding in the forest, about the Bigfoot healing in our basement. Beth stared at me like I'd lost my mind. She asked if I was drunk, if I was having some kind of breakdown. I took her hand and led her to the basement door. Unlocked it, told her she could see for herself or she could trust me. Her choice. She chose to see. We walked down the stairs together. August was awake, watching us approach. Beth stopped 3 steps from the bottom. She saw the Bigfoot and her hand tightened on mine so hard it hurt. August and Beth looked at each other for a long moment. Then August did something incredible. It raised one hand in what looked unmistakably like a peaceful greeting, recognition of another caregiver maybe, another healer. Beth started crying, not from fear, from wonder. Daniel found out the next day. He skipped his last class and came home early. I was at the clinic. Beth was at work. Daniel thought he was alone in the house. He'd been suspicious for days. His parents suddenly talking to each other. His mother looking shocked and frightened. The basement door locked constantly. Something was happening and nobody was telling him. He picked the lock. He learned how from YouTube videos, teenage rebellion meeting curiosity. He walked down the stairs and found August sitting on the examination table, awake and alert. A Bigfoot in his basement. Real, impossible, undeniable. Daniel told me later that he'd frozen on the stairs, just stood there staring, his brain trying to process what his eyes were seeing. All those stories, all those blurry photos, all those people called crazy, and here it was, real. August didn't move, didn't react aggressively, just watched this teenager the same way August had watched me. Careful assessment, no threat implied. They looked at each other for maybe 5 minutes, neither moving. Daniel said later it felt like the Bigfoot was waiting, giving him time to adjust, to accept. Finally, Daniel sat down on the stairs. He pulled out his phone, started to take a picture, then stopped himself. Something told him that would be wrong, violation of privacy or trust or something he couldn't name. He tried to show August videos instead, YouTube clips of forests, of animals, of anything he could think of. August watched the phone screen with focused interest. Technology it had probably never seen before, understanding it somehow anyway. That's how I found them when I came home. My teenage son sitting on the basement stairs, showing a Bigfoot cat videos on his phone. August making soft huffing sounds that might have been Bigfoot laughter. Daniel looked at me when I came down. His expression was complicated. Wonder, anger, fear, accusation. He said, "You know what's looking for this thing, right? You know there are federal agents searching every house in the neighborhood. You brought a manhunt to our home and didn't tell me?" I tried to explain, tried to justify. Daniel cut me off. He said, "I've barely spoken to you in 2 years. You've been a terrible father, absent, drunk, disconnected, and now this. This is what finally gets your attention. Not me, not mom, a Bigfoot." The words hit harder than any punch could have. But then Daniel looked at August again, looked at the careful way I'd set up the medical equipment, looked at the drawings August had made in spilled powder still visible on the floor. He said, "It's real. They're real. Bigfoot is real, and it's in our basement, and the entire federal government wants it." He asked what we were going to do. Not what I was going to do, what we were going to do. I told him I didn't know. I was figuring it out as I went. Daniel said, "Then we better figure it fast because they're not going to stop looking." That night, we had the first real family meeting we'd had in years. All 4 of us in the basement, me, Beth, Daniel, and August, the most dysfunctional family dinner in history. Beth had brought supplies from her nursing job, better bandages, stronger antibiotics, pain medication that might work better than what I'd been using. She approached August with professional calm, checked vitals, examined the healing injuries, spoke softly like she would to any frightened patient. August led her, seemed to understand she was helping just like I was helping, 2 caregivers working together. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, his phone out. He was researching everything he could find about Bigfoot sightings in the Pacific Northwest, trying to understand what August was, where August came from, if there were others. I explained what the federal agents had told me, the perimeter, the searches, the rewards, how they were narrowing the grid. We needed a plan. August couldn't stay hidden in our basement forever. Eventually, someone would find out. Eventually, agents would come with a warrant. Eventually, they'd take August and we'd never see what happened next. Beth asked the hard question. What do they want with it? With August? Why this level of response for one Bigfoot? Daniel found news articles, reports going back decades, sightings that suddenly went quiet after federal involvement, witnesses who recanted stories, evidence that disappeared, a pattern of suppression and cover-up. He said, "They've known about Bigfoot for years. They've been trying to catch one, study it, maybe weaponize it, who knows what else." August watched us discuss its fate, those intelligent eyes moving from face to face, understanding we were trying to help even if August couldn't follow our words. I asked August about its leg. How much longer until August could walk, could run, could escape if we helped? August tried to stand, managed to put weight on the healing leg for maybe 10 seconds before pain forced August back down. Still too weak, still too vulnerable. We estimated another week minimum before August could travel, maybe 2 to be safe. We didn't have 2 weeks. The federal presence was intensifying daily. Unmarked SUVs on our street, agents going door to door asking questions, helicopters flying search patterns overhead. Beth made the decision for us. She said August stays until August can walk properly. We don't put August at risk just because we're scared. We protect August until August can protect itself. Daniel agreed. I agreed. We were committed. The family that had been broken for years suddenly found unity in the most impossible situation. We had shared purpose, shared secret, shared determination to protect something that needed us. August reached out and touched each of our hands in turn. Gentle acknowledgement. Trust given to 3 humans who decided to risk everything for someone who wasn't even their species. That night, I didn't drink. For the first time in years, I didn't need to. I had something worth being sober for. Organized narrative structure and verified formatting compliance for upcoming chapters. I need to continue with chapters 10 or 15. Let me make sure I'm maintaining the 500-word count exactly for each chapter and following all the formatting requirements. Chapter 10 should be about teaching and learning, the family spending time with August, learning from each other. The next few days became a routine of learning and teaching. August's condition was improving. The leg was getting stronger. The ribs had healed enough that breathing didn't cause visible pain. But August still needed time. We spent hours in that basement, all of us, learning about August and teaching August about us. The strangest cultural exchange in history. August showed us things that seemed impossible. It demonstrated hearing ranges we couldn't access. Would react to sounds minutes before we heard anything. Daniel tested it, played frequency generators on his phone. August could hear well into ranges that should have been inaudible to any mammal. August drew more maps and spilled powder and chalk, showed us territory ranges across hundreds of square miles, showed us how logging had destroyed habitat, how roads cut through migration paths, how human expansion had pushed Bigfoot populations into smaller and smaller areas. Beth asked about others, about August's family. August drew them again, 5 figures, 2 large, 3 small, then showed us hunters, showed us violence, showed us August alone after. We understood. Sport hunters, people who killed for trophy. August's entire family murdered for proof that Bigfoot existed. August had been hiding ever since. Daniel recorded some of this until I made him delete it. Every piece of evidence was a danger. Every photo, every video, every recording was something that could condemn August if we were caught. August taught us to recognize vibrations, put our hands flat on the concrete floor, showed us how to feel the difference between machinery, vehicles, people walking above. Survival skills developed over generations of hiding. I realized this knowledge was being passed to us the way it had been passed through August's family. Cultural transmission, teaching the next generation. Except we weren't Bigfoot, and this might be the last time anyone learned these things. August seemed focused on making sure we understood. Drew pictures, demonstrated movements, repeated lessons until we got it right. Like August knew time was running out. Like August wanted something of Bigfoot culture to survive, even if August didn't. Beth cried one night while wrapping fresh bandages on August's leg. She said, "This is someone's child. Someone's family member. This Bigfoot had a mother who loved it, had siblings who played with it, had a life before humans destroyed it." August touched her face gently, wiped away her tears with one massive finger. The gesture was so tender, so unmistakably compassionate, that I had to look away. Daniel asked August about communication, about how Bigfoot talked to each other if any others existed. August made sounds, low-frequency vocalizations that we felt more than heard, vibrations that carried through the earth, long-distance signaling. Daniel recorded the frequencies without August seeing. I should have made him delete those too. I didn't. I wanted proof this had happened, wanted evidence that August was real even if I never showed anyone. Our family was healing in that basement, talking to each other, working together, being present for something that mattered. August was saving us by letting us save August. Someone talked. I never learned who. Maybe the state trooper from that first night. Maybe a neighbor who heard sounds from our basement. Maybe someone saw something through a window. It happened on day 19. October had turned cold and gray. I was at my clinic when Beth called. Her voice was shaking. She said there were federal agents at our door with a warrant. I told her to stall them. Buy time. I was 20 minutes away. Beth said the warrant was for searching the premises for an undocumented animal, potential bioterrorism threat. They had authority to search everything, including the basement. I ran to my van, drove home breaking every speed limit. My phone rang again. Daniel. He said Mom was arguing with them at the front door, making them show identification, demanding to call our lawyer, creating a scene. He said he was getting August out through the coal chute, the old exit from when the house was built in the 1940s. We'd forgotten it existed until Daniel found it behind some storage boxes. I told him to do it. Get August to the tree line behind our property, into the forest, away from the house before they breached. I got home as agents were forcing the front door, 5 men in tactical gear, not regular FBI, something else, something military adjacent. They weren't playing games anymore. I ran to the backyard, found Daniel helping August through the coal chute opening. August could barely fit. The leg was better but not healed enough for running. August was limping badly. Daniel had my van running in the back alley. We'd planned for this. Route to the National Forest mapped, supplies packed, emergency escape. But August wouldn't go, just stood there in my backyard, looking at me. Those intelligent eyes full of something I recognized. Gratitude. Goodbye. Maybe both. I told August to run, to get to the forest, to survive. That's all that mattered. August reached out and touched my face, held my head between both massive hands for just a moment. The gesture felt like a blessing, like forgiveness, like thanks. Then August turned and limped toward the tree line, moving faster than I thought possible with that leg, disappearing into October darkness and fog. I stood there watching until I couldn't see August anymore, just trees and shadows and the sound of something massive moving through undergrowth. Behind me, I heard agents breach the basement, heard shouts, heard boots on stairs. They'd find everything. The medical equipment, the blood samples, the drawings, the evidence, everything except August. Daniel grabbed my arm, said we had to go back inside, face it together. Running would make things worse. We walked around to the front of the house. Agents were everywhere, searching, documenting, photographing. Our home had become a crime scene. The lead agent approached me. He knew. I could see it in his eyes. He knew we'd had something and he knew we'd let it escape. He said, "Where is it? Where's the specimen?" I looked at him and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I treat injured animals in my basement. That's not illegal." He smiled, not friendly. He said, "We'll see what the evidence shows." They took me to a facility I couldn't identify. Not county jail, not federal prison, somewhere unmarked with no windows and no signs. 3 days of interrogation in a room that felt like it existed outside normal law. The agents wouldn't identify their organization, wouldn't tell me what charges I faced, just asked the same questions over and over. Where did the Bigfoot go? What did it tell me? Are there others? How do we find them? I told them nothing, said I'd treated an injured animal, said I didn't know what species, said it escaped during their raid. That was my story. They showed me evidence, blood samples from my basement. They'd analyzed them. Unknown DNA sequences, primate markers that didn't match any cataloged species. Proof I'd been housing something that shouldn't exist. They showed me the drawings August had made, the family groups, the territory maps, the cultural transmission. They Said this proved intelligence, proved society, proved that Bigfoot wasn't just an animal, but a being with rights and protections I'd violated by not reporting it. I almost laughed at that. They wanted to capture Bigfoot, study it, maybe dissect it, and they were accusing me of violating its rights by hiding it. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The lead interrogator changed tactics on day 2, said they'd been tracking Bigfoot populations for decades, said they'd known about them since at least the 1960s, said there were maybe 300 left in all of North America, endangered, dying, needing protection. He made it sound noble, like they wanted to save Bigfoot, like I'd interfered with conservation efforts. I asked what happened to the Bigfoot they'd captured before, asked where those specimens were now, asked if any had survived federal custody. He didn't answer, just moved to the next question. On day 3, they brought in someone new, a woman in a lab coat. She said she was a primatologist working with the program. She showed me photos, blurry images of Bigfoot in forests, videos taken from helicopters, evidence of a population barely hanging on. She said I'd had a chance to advance human knowledge, to help save a dying species, to be part of something historic, and I'd thrown it away by hiding one injured Bigfoot in my basement. I asked her what would have happened to August if I'd turned it in. Would August have been released after treatment? Would August have been studied gently and respectfully? Or would August have died on an examination table somewhere while scientists took samples? She looked away. I had my answer. My lawyer showed up finally. Beth had hired someone good, someone who specialized in federal cases. He got me out on day 4, released pending charges. The government was still building its case. He told me I was facing serious time, obstruction of federal investigation, harboring dangerous wildlife, interference with endangered species protection, conspiracy charges if they could prove Beth and Daniel had helped. He asked me if it was worth it, if hiding one Bigfoot was worth destroying my life. I said yes without hesitation. Some things matter more than consequences. I came home to find my house ransacked. Federal agents had searched everything, torn apart furniture, pulled up floorboards, dismantled the basement clinic. They'd taken equipment, records, anything that might be evidence. The basement was sealed with yellow tape, biohazard warning signs posted on the door. They'd declared it a contaminated site. We couldn't enter our own basement without federal permission. Beth and Daniel were there. They'd stayed together during my interrogation, waited for news, worried I wouldn't come back. Daniel looked older. Something had changed in his eyes. The anger I'd seen for years had been replaced by something else. Determination, maybe. Purpose. Beth held me for a long time. We'd barely touched in years, and suddenly we were clinging to each other, survivors of something that had tried to break us. The media found out. Of course they did. Some federal agent leaked the story. Within days, news vans were parked on our street, reporters shouting questions whenever we left the house. Local vet hid unknown creature. Federal investigation continues. Possible Bigfoot captured and released. We became a story, a conspiracy theory, a joke and a sensation at the same time. People believed us. People thought we were crazy. Nobody knew the truth. My veterinary license was suspended. The state board said I'd violated ethical guidelines, endangered public safety, failed to report a dangerous animal. The hearing was a formality. I lost my practice. Beth lost her nursing job a week later. Her employer said it was downsizing. We knew better. They didn't want the association, didn't want the media attention, easier to let her go. Daniel dropped out of school. The harassment was too much. Kids following him in hallways, teachers treating him like a liar or a freak. He couldn't focus, couldn't function in that environment. We lost everything in 3 weeks: career, reputation, income, privacy, normal life. But we had each other in a way we hadn't for years. My trial came in early 2004, federal charges. The prosecution had evidence, blood samples, testimony from agents, photos of my basement clinic. The drawings August had made, now presented as proof of harboring an intelligent being. My lawyer negotiated a plea deal: 6 months in federal prison, 10 years probation, permanent ban from practicing veterinary medicine, fines that would take years to pay off. If I didn't take it, they'd charge Beth and Daniel as accessories. Conspiracy. They'd destroy my whole family instead of just me. I took the deal. Beth filed for divorce while I was in prison. Not because she stopped loving me. She explained it in a letter. For Daniel's protection. If we were divorced, he had distance from my conviction. Legal separation that might save his future. I understood. I signed the papers. Sometimes love means letting go of what you wanted so the people you care about can survive. I served 6 months in a federal facility in Oregon. When I was released, my life was unrecognizable. No career, no marriage, no home. We'd lost the house to legal fees. But Daniel visited every week. Beth came with him. They hadn't abandoned me. They'd protected themselves while staying connected. That mattered more than any legal document. 20 years passed, 20 years of living with the secret and the consequences, 20 years of being the man who hid Bigfoot in his basement and lost everything. I worked construction at first, then as a night janitor at an office building, jobs nobody else wanted, work that didn't require references or background checks that could pass scrutiny. I was overqualified and underemployed and surviving. The federal government never stopped watching. I saw cars outside my apartment sometimes, black SUVs that stayed for hours then disappeared. My phone had strange clicks. My mail was sometimes opened and resealed. They wanted to know if I'd stayed in contact with August, if I knew where Bigfoot went, if I had evidence I hadn't turned over. They never stopped hoping I'd lead them to something. I never saw August again, not directly, but I found signs over the years. I hiked the forests around where we'd released August, found tree structures that seemed intentional, formations of branches that didn't occur naturally, messages maybe, or just wishful thinking. Once I found a pattern of stones arranged near a stream, circular with a line through it. The same pattern August had drawn that first week, the symbol August had used for self, for individual identity. August's way of saying I'm still here, still surviving, still remembering. I never told anyone about these signs, never documented them. Some things are meant to stay private. Some connections exist only in the space between proof and faith. Beth remarried in 2007. A good man, an accountant named Robert who treated Daniel well and didn't ask too many questions about her past. I went to the wedding, sat in the back, was genuinely happy for her. She deserved stability, deserved someone who could provide the life I'd destroyed. We stayed friends in a complicated way. The bond forged during those 3 weeks with August never really broke. We'd shared something too profound to forget. Daniel went to college eventually. Took him a few years to recover from dropping out of high school. He got his GED, worked jobs, saved money, applied to universities that would take someone with his history. He studied environmental law, graduated top of his class, became a lawyer specializing in wilderness protection, federal lands, conservation easements, habitat preservation. He never told me directly, but I understood. He was protecting the places where Bigfoot might still survive, using law instead of hiding, using his career to do what we'd done in our basement, keeping them safe. He fought logging operations in old growth forests, challenged development projects near known Bigfoot sighting areas, won cases that preserved thousands of acres. He was brilliant and dedicated in making real differences. I was proud of him in ways I'd never been proud when he was young. He'd found purpose, found meaning, found a way to honor what August had taught us without ever mentioning August by name. The federal government's search for Bigfoot continued. I followed news reports, sightings that suddenly went quiet, witnesses who recanted, evidence that disappeared, the same pattern repeating across decades. They never caught one, never confirmed existence publicly. The truth stayed hidden in classified files and unmarked facilities. In 2024, my heart started failing. Congestive heart failure, progressive, incurable. The doctors gave me maybe a year, maybe less if stress accelerated decline. Daniel moved me into hospice care in Portland. Good facility, kind nurses, private room where I could look out windows at trees and pretend I was seeing forest where Bigfoot still lived. I'd kept certain things over the years, hidden them carefully, moved them from apartment to apartment, evidence I'd never shown anyone but couldn't destroy. My medical journal from those 3 weeks, detailed notes on August's treatment, anatomy, behavior, written in code only I understood, but comprehensive. Everything I'd observed. Daniel's phone video, the one I'd told him to delete but he'd kept anyway. 30 seconds of August in our basement, moving, breathing, undeniably real. encrypted and stored in multiple locations. The carved stone August had given me that last day, pressed into my hand during that goodbye in the backyard, a smooth river rock with deliberate marks. Gift or token or proof, I'd never been sure which. I'd hidden everything in a safe deposit box under a false name. Bank in Seattle. Nobody knew it existed except me. Evidence of the most important 3 weeks of my life, locked away where it couldn't hurt anyone. Last week, Daniel came to visit. He'd been going through my old garage, cleaning out belongings, preparing for the inevitable. He found newspaper clippings hidden in a wall cavity, headlines from October 2003. Federal manhunt, unknown creature, house raid, my arrest, everything I'd tried to forget by hiding it behind drywall. Daniel sat beside my bed holding those clippings. He said, "I was 16. I remember living through this, but I don't remember you ever explaining why." "Not really, not the whole truth," he said. "You went to prison for 6 months, lost your career, lost everything, and you never complained, never acted like you regretted it. Why, Dad? What was worth that much?" I looked at my son, 55 years old now, successful lawyer, good man, someone I'd failed for years then somehow helped save. He deserved the truth, the complete truth, no more hiding. I told him everything, every detail, this whole story from the phone call to August's escape to the years after, the lessons learned, the connection forged, the choice to protect instead of exploit. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long time, processing, deciding whether to believe his dying father or think the cancer had affected my brain. Finally, he asked, "Can you prove it? Do you have evidence? Anything that shows this was real and not just a story you've told yourself for 20 years. I gave him the address of the safe deposit box in Seattle, told him the false name I'd used, told him everything was there, journal, video, stone. Proof that August existed and we'd hidden August, and I'd kept the secret for 2 decades. Daniel held the paper with the address. His hands were shaking slightly. Daniel asked me why I was telling him now. Why, after 20 years of silence, I was revealing everything. Why I was putting this burden on him. I told him the truth. I'm dying, and you deserve to know what happened to your father, why I changed, why those 3 weeks mattered more than anything else in my life. I told him I needed someone to protect the location where we released August, someone to continue what I'd started, making sure that part of the forest stayed preserved, stayed protected, stayed secret. I told him someone needed to decide what to do with the evidence, whether to reveal it and vindicate our family but expose Bigfoot to discovery, or keep the silence and protect what August needed protected. Daniel said, "You're asking me to be the keeper of your secret, to carry this for the rest of my life." I said yes, because I trust you, because you've spent 20 years protecting wilderness without knowing why those specific places mattered, because you're already doing the work, you just didn't know the whole reason. He stood and walked to the window, looked out at the trees beyond the hospice facility. I couldn't read his expression. He said, "If this is real, if you really hid a Bigfoot in our basement, this is the biggest discovery in history. Proof that an unknown hominid species exists in North America. And you're asking me to help bury it." "Again," I said, "I'm asking you to honor the trust a dying being placed in a stranger. August could have fought us, could have escaped that first night, could have hurt us. Instead, August trusted us to heal it, hide it, protect it." I said, "The world doesn't need another species to study and exploit. It doesn't need Bigfoot in zoos or laboratories. It needs to leave them alone, let them die in peace if that's their fate, let them survive in privacy if any remain." Daniel turned from the window. He had tears in his eyes. He said, "Mom knew. She believed you. She helped you. And she never told me the complete truth either. You both carried this alone." I explained about Beth's divorce, how it was protection, not abandonment, how she'd stayed connected while giving Daniel legal distance from my conviction, how she'd sacrificed our marriage to save our son's future. Daniel sat back down. He said, "I need to see the evidence. I need to know if I'm protecting truth or supporting my father's delusion. I need to know what's real." I told him the box was his now, Everything in it. He could look, could decide, could choose what to do with it. I trusted his judgment more than my own at this point. He asked what I wanted him to do, if I had preference for how this story ended. I said, protect August. Protect the species if any remain, protect the mystery. Some things are more valuable hidden than revealed. Some beings deserve privacy more than they deserve discovery. Daniel took the safe deposit box information, promised he'd go within the week, promised he'd decide carefully, promised he wouldn't make any choice lightly. We sat together in my hospice room as the sun set. Father and son, connected by an impossible story that had shaped both our lives. Daniel went to the safe deposit box 3 days later, called me from the bank in Seattle. His voice was shaking when he said, "Dad, I'm looking at it. The journal, the video, the stone. It's all here." I asked if he believed me now, if the evidence was enough. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said, "The video shows something I can't explain. Something massive and intelligent in our basement, moving like a person, responding to us like it understood." He said, "The journal has details no one could fabricate, anatomical observations that match unknown primate theories, medical procedures that make sense only if you were treating something real." He said, "The stone has marks that aren't random, deliberate carving, tool use, intelligence." I waited, let him process. Finally, Daniel said, whether it was Bigfoot or some other explanation, something happened in our basement 20 years ago. Something that changed you, changed our family, changed everything. He said, "I'm going to protect it, not because I'm completely sure I believe it was Bigfoot, but because whatever happened, it mattered enough that you kept this secret for 2 decades. That's worth honoring." I felt relief I hadn't known I needed. The burden shared. The story continued. Daniel asked about the location, where we'd released August, whether I remembered exactly where. I gave him coordinates, described the terrain, the tree line behind our old house, the direction August had gone. I'd memorized it 20 years ago. Some memories stay perfect because they're too important to fade. He said he'd been working on conservation for that entire watershed for 3 years. Federal wilderness protection, one of his biggest cases. He'd won it last year. The whole area was now protected forever. No logging, no development, no disturbance. I hadn't known. He'd done it without telling me. Protected the place where August disappeared before he even knew why it mattered. Daniel said, "I'm going to visit the site, going to see if there are any signs, any evidence August survived, any indication others might be there." I told him to be careful, to be respectful, to remember that if Bigfoot still exists there, they've stayed hidden for good reasons. They don't want to be found. He promised. Said he'd go alone, said he wouldn't document anything, said if he found signs, he'd keep them private just like I had. We talked for another hour about August, about the 3 weeks, about the lessons learned, about how protecting something can matter more than proving it. Before hanging up, Daniel said, "Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth protecting even when it costs everything." I said, "You already knew that. You've been doing it your whole career. I just gave you context for why." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The secret shared. The burden lightened. The story continuing through someone I trusted. Some legacies aren't about what you accomplish. They're about what you protect and who you trust to protect it after you're gone. I died 6 weeks later. Early morning in midwinter. Peaceful, according to the nurses. Heart simply stopped between one breath and the next. No pain, no struggle, just ending. Daniel was there, had been staying in Portland to be close. He held my hand as I faded, told me later I smiled at the end like I was seeing something good. Maybe I was. Maybe I saw August one more time and whatever comes after. Daniel handled everything with quiet efficiency. Cremation like I'd requested. No funeral, just a small memorial with Beth and Daniel and a few people from my years working construction. People who'd known the man I became after prison, not the man I'd been before. But Daniel did something I hadn't expected. He took some of my ashes and went hiking. Drove to the area where we'd released August 20 years ago, found the coordinates I'd given him, walked into the forest alone with my remains in a simple container. He told me this story later, much later. Said he felt foolish hiking into the woods with his dead father's ashes to visit a Bigfoot that probably didn't exist anymore. But he did it anyway because some promises matter more than logic. He reached the area. Dense forest, old growth, protected now by the wilderness designation his law firm had won. No trails, no people, no signs anyone had been there in years. Daniel started to scatter my ashes near a stream, thought it was appropriate, peaceful, final. Then he heard something. Movement in the undergrowth, something large, something that stopped when he stopped, something watching. Daniel froze. His rational lawyer brain told him it was a deer, a bear, anything normal. But something deeper knew different, recognized the presence, understood what it might be. He didn't see it clearly, just a shape at the edge of his vision, massive, dark, there for a moment, then gone into the trees. But before it disappeared, the shape did something, raised one hand, a gesture Daniel recognized from the video he'd watched, from the stories I'd told. August's peaceful greeting, recognition from 20 years ago. Or maybe it was nothing. Maybe Daniel's grief made him see what he wanted to see, made shadows into meaning, made loss into connection. He scattered my ashes there anyway, said goodbye to me and to August, and to the story that had shaped his life. Walking back to his car, Daniel found something. A stone near the trail, smooth river rock with deliberate marks carved into it, similar to the one August had given me. Gift or coincidence or message. Daniel kept the stone, put it with the other evidence in the safe deposit box, locked it away again, protected it like he promised. He never told anyone about his hike, never mentioned what he might have seen, never broke the silence I'd maintained for 20 years. This is Daniel writing now. My father died 3 months ago, and I'm finishing his story because he asked me to. Because someone needs to know what happened and why it mattered. I'm 68 years old, the same age my father was when he told me about August. I understand now why he waited, why he kept silent, why he only shared when death gave him permission to break the rules. I've spent 20 years as an environmental lawyer, won dozens of cases protecting wilderness, saved hundreds of thousands of acres from development and destruction. People think I do it for conservation, for ecology, for future generations. They're not wrong, but that's not the whole reason. I do it for August, for Bigfoot, for the possibility that somewhere in those protected forests, something impossible still survives, something that trusted my father enough to let him help, something that deserves privacy more than proof. I've visited the site where we released August 7 times over the years. Never found anything conclusive. Sometimes I find tree structures that seem intentional. Sometimes I find stone patterns that feel like messages. Sometimes I find nothing at all. I don't know if August survived. Don't know if other Bigfoot exist in those forests. Don't know if what we protected 20 years ago still needs protection. But I keep protecting it anyway. Because my father taught me that some things matter more than certainty. Some commitments outlast proof. Some secrets protect what's valuable about mystery itself. I have the evidence locked away. The journal, the video, the stones. Proof that would vindicate my father, clear his name, show the world he wasn't crazy or criminal. Proof that would make me famous, make our family's sacrifice mean something publicly. I'll never release it, never show it, never break the promise my father made in a basement 20 years ago. The video will stay encrypted, the journal will stay hidden, the stones will stay locked away. When I die, I'll pass them to my daughter with the same instructions my father gave me. Protect this, keep it secret. Honor what it means even if you're not sure you believe it. My daughter is studying conservation biology. She doesn't know why yet, doesn't know the family story that shaped her path. Someday I'll tell her. When I'm dying and have permission to break silence like my father did, she'll decide what to do with the evidence, whether to continue the protection or finally reveal the truth. I trust her judgment. Trust that whatever choice she makes will honor what August taught us, that protecting something vulnerable matters more than proving you were right, that some beings deserve to exist without being observed, studied, cataloged, that humanity's desire to know everything doesn't obligate the world to reveal itself. This is the end of my father's story. The end of August's story, maybe the end of Bigfoot's story if no others survive, but it's not the end of protection, not the end of the work, not the end of keeping. Promises that outlast the people who made them. Somewhere in protected wilderness, maybe August still lives. Maybe other Bigfoot hide in forests we've saved. Maybe it's all gone and we're protecting ghosts and memories.